Welcome to a brief introduction to mechanical ventilation. This is chapter 1.3, carbon dioxide excretion. Now, as you know, carbon dioxide is a waste product, and this comes primarily from the burning of oxygen in the mitochondria in all of our cells. Unlike oxygen, it is not bound to hemoglobin when it's transported in the blood. Carbon dioxide will dissolve from the cells into the blood and then into the red blood cells, where it will undergo a series of chemical reactions to carbolic acid and then to bicarbonate in order to facilitate its transport. These chemical reactions also facilitate buffering of acids that are present in the blood from other aspects of metabolism. Once the red blood cell carrying the carbon dioxide gets to the alveoli, the chemical reaction reverses, and this carbon dioxide then, being a gas, diffuses along its concentration gradient from the blood and into the alveoli. Now, as we had mentioned in a previous lecture, if you don't do something, the alveoli will quickly fill up with carbon dioxide, and it will also then push all of the oxygen concentration down, causing hypoventilation, hypoxemia. This is the reason why we take a breath in and out, to get rid of carbon dioxide. There are two parts of respiration that you need to understand. First is the concept of a tidal volume. Tidal volume is basically just a breath in and a breath out. We can set this on the ventilator, and as a rule of thumb, I say that an average person's tidal volume is about 500 milliliters per breath. The second factor is the number of breaths per minute. These two factors together, tidal volume and breaths per minute, give us something we call the minute ventilation, which we measure in liters per minute of carbon dioxide. If we want to get rid of more carbon dioxide, if there's a buildup in the blood from an increased production of carbon dioxide, then we have to either increase the number of breaths per minute or we have to increase our tidal volume. However, we can't forget the issue of dead space. Now, you'll recall from the first lecture, the upper airways, both the trachea and the bronchuses, are part of the tidal volume, but don't actually participate in gas exchange. So this volume of air that we have to move with each breath is not participating in gas exchange and is what we call dead space ventilation. As a rule of thumb, I usually say that a dead space in a normal adult is about 150 milliliters, which means that approximately 30% of each tidal volume is dead space ventilation. Flip it on its head, and we find that about 350 milliliters of tidal volume is what we call effective ventilation. This is the amount of gas that is actually participating in gas exchange. If the total tidal volume and frequency of 12 gives us a minute ventilation of 6 liters per minute, when the effective ventilation is about 350 milliliters, we find that 4.2 liters per minute is actually the effective ventilation. Now, suppose somebody was tachypnic and they were breathing very shallowly. If, for example, somebody was breathing 200 milliliters per minute, they would only have an effective ventilation of about 50 milliliters because the space in the trachea and the bronchus doesn't change. And now this person's dead space ventilation fraction has gone up to 75% from 30%. If they're only effectively ventilating 50 milliliters instead of 350 milliliters, this means that they have to breathe 84 times per minute just to keep up with minute ventilation that they had before they became short of breath. So you can see that if somebody starts becoming tachypnic and breathing very shallowly, they may actually not be getting rid of all of this CO2 that they're trying to get rid of because of this problem of dead space ventilation. This issue is compounded because the patient may actually be producing more carbon dioxide and is actually the reason why they're so much more tachypnic and breathing shallow. with even the respiratory muscles themselves increasing carbon dioxide production from the amount of work that they're already producing. So the factors that determine the carbon dioxide levels in the blood are several-fold. First is the actual production of carbon dioxide at the cell level. So increasing metabolic demand will increase carbon dioxide. Excretion of CO2 is the other main determinant, and from that are three main factors. First is the tidal volume. Second is the frequency of respiration, and this is together the minute ventilation. And then finally, the dead space. The relationship of those factors is shown here. You can see that any increase in minute ventilation or frequency will decrease the carbon dioxide levels because it's an inverse relationship. Whereas the dead space, when it increases carbon dioxide levels because there's a direct relationship.